Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of our little talk show called SoundGP Talk. Talk GP. It's too many acronyms and things these days. This is our usual slot on a Tuesday night. I'm gonna dob this microphone week. We've got a nice theme going in my head already. I've been having some discussions with a couple of people over the last couple of days about microphones. Favorite microphones, choice of microphones. We had a good time on Friday with our live session with Marlon Green, where we used the VR3000, and we just did a little bit of a very rough virtual sound check with a focus on gain structure and capturing. We're going to keep doing a couple of those. It's obviously we don't want to make them too long. We want to keep them nice and short and punch into the point. Those we're obviously doing at our music room, so it's difficult to do. We can't do those after 8 at night because of the curfew at the moment. But we rebroadcast them, and I did watch the stream to get some comments going and all those kind of things. So thanks for those guys who watched it. We did quite a few people watch it live. We're going to do it again this week on Friday. We're going to start a little bit later. We're going to make it 11 o'clock a.m. Just to give ourselves a little bit more space to get ready. We're going to try and do a little bit of more preparation. We learn every week. We get our camera angles a bit better. We've reset the room a little bit. So what's going to be nice is we're going to start and talking being microphone week. Obviously, by Friday we're going to be focusing specifically on the capturing side of microphones and microphone choice. And a drum kit is a very nice way of illustrating some do's and don'ts, some preferences, some options, some choices. If you have a decent source, a well-tuned drum kit that sounds great, a lot of microphones work really well on it. And then it just comes down to what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to get out of the source that you've got going. You might have noticed I've got a new little toy on the desk here. It's not new. It's about my age. 28. Like we just keep the theme going. This is a 44-1. I estimated it about a 1974. So that blink was Johan talking to us in the background. I'm just going to remind everybody we've got the competition running. If you watch episode 16 of Talk GP, where there's a MV51 up for grabs. We're going to announce that on Thursday evening, 8 o'clock on our talk. So just follow the link to our YouTube page, watch the episode, leave a comment, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got all the episodes on there. So that'll be a nice one for whoever wins it. We've got a picture on our Facebook site. Tembo won the previous microphone, got a t-shirt from us. We handed over to him earlier this week or over the weekend. So congrats, I hope he enjoys that microphone. Thank you, Waldemar, once again for the sponsorship of that. Anton that organized it for us, and Darren and Gary and all the guys there. Thank you very much. I feel guilty now talking on an AKG microphone, but there are so many microphones out there. I've got a nice selection of mics that I've built up over the past about 13, 14 years. I've got some mics that are older than that I've had for a long time, but and I often say, I suffer a little bit from GAS, which is gear acquisition syndrome. You can't help yourself when you come across something that's really unique or really purposeful or got a really a good solution to a potential issue that you've got. It's something you got to grab at. I mean, this 44-1 I got, and I picked it up from someone. I found it on a Facebook ad, and I've used it since then. I've used it successfully. It sounds great. It works very well on quite a few places. But then again, of the previous couple of episodes, I've been talking on a C1000, which is an old faithful that's been coming. C1000, if I'm not mistaken, is early 92, 93 that it came out, and it hasn't really changed since. It's got some great options in it. It can take a 9-volt battery, which obviously works great. It's got 2 caps that come with it. One that makes it a super cardioid, and then one little flat cap that gives it a little 5K burst if you want to use it on a hi-hat or overheads or something like that. Really versatile. You can stick it on vocals with no caps in it. When I want to talk about a cap, I can actually, where did I put it? It's somewhere here. I'm going to remember where I put it down in a couple of seconds. It might be in here. I'll show you. Let's make this interactive. So this is a C1000, and it has, I actually keep them inside because I don't tend to use phantom power all the time. So the battery slot becomes a great little hideaway spot. So on the capsule, just make sure you hold the capsule. We've got this first little cap. This makes it a super cardioid. Now it's just a cardioid. And then you've got this little flat. It looks like nothing. A lot of people throw it away, a little plastic thing. You clip this on. Now it's got a 5K boost. If you look in the spec sheet, you can see just exactly what it puts in. So this microphone, just with using 3 options on the capsule, you get quite a few very nice solutions. It's a very well mounted capsule, so it can handle a lot of hand noise. So I mean, I've seen people use these as vocal mics. The only reason it's physically so big is obviously to keep to get the battery in there, and because it's got a battery, it's got an on-off switch, so you don't run your battery down. Put that to the side. But then as we go through things, obviously I had a chat this morning with a bunch of students about microphones. We were just talking about microphone types, condensers, dynamics. There's ribbons, there's piezos, there's a whole bunch of mics. And if you go over the years, it's not a question of the one is better than the other one. It's whatever it was designed into. We've got old faithfuls in the industry that's been around for more years than we've been around, which work very well in certain circumstances. An SM58, which everybody knows backwards, works great. And new SM58 today sounds just as good as one sounded 30 years ago. It's very robust. It's not the world's best mic. It's not like 58 is the benchmark for every mic to try and get to. No, it's got a unique tone. Works very well. Proximity effect on it is very nice. If you don't know what proximity effect is, then ask me and I'll tell you. Aiden is asking, am I still using switcher or OBS? I'm on OBS at the moment. Switcher is what we use when we do our live multicam shoots. So I'm sitting in my little warehouse here, or my garage. I'm using OBS because it's all set up and ready. I'm using Epoch Cam to get my phone into as the camera. So I'm using an iPhone as a camera because I'm on a normal Dell screen with a Mac Pro, so I don't have an onboard camera. But yeah, so keep the questions coming. What I like about questions is not always about just not having anything to say, but questions gives us an idea of where you guys are at, what you want to know. It helps us create a theme. And also some questions are really good instigators for good deep discussion. I got some questions today from a bunch of first years at ASE, which are, I wanted to answer them really deeply, but I had to maintain myself within the context of what we were talking about. But you can really get carried away. I had me and Keith the other night on our discussion last week, which went really well. We spoke for 2 hours, and we spoke a couple of days before that a lot about microphones and choices. He's also got a 44-1 she pulled out on the camera just to brag. So it's definitely a lot of subject. And I think what I've realized in doing all these episodes is within our industry, if you get a bunch of guys together that are passionate about our industry, number one, you'll get guys that really want to get into PA, and they'll discuss PA to the ends, whether it would be the GUIs, whether it be the physical aspect, the rigging, the sound, durability, setup, amps, processing, all these kind of things. And then you'll have the same guys with the same kind of conversations with consoles. And then again, you'll have the same conversations with microphones. And yet microphones is our first step, is our first line of defense, for lack of a better description. If you can have a phenomenal source on stage, an amazing vocalist, just an awesome potential input, and then by miking it wrong or choosing the wrong microphone can really take it south. And what do I mean by that? It's just, you can even have a guy use a microphone that was designed for something, use it on that specific source wrong, and it doesn't work. A lot of guys do pillows and blankets and whatever inside of a kick drum. If you treat a kick drum, and you've seen guys treat kick drums before with pillows or blankets or pads or ring absorbers on the skins or what. There's quite a few ways you can do it. Some of the manufacturers, skin manufacturers, do their own things. But all of that needs to be done with a purpose, and that's a discussion we'll have on Friday, and we'll look at that practically a little bit. But, if you've got a blanket or a pillow or something inside of a kick drum, and you take a Beta 52, which is a kick drum microphone, and you put it inside on the pillow, then, you need to understand what you're doing. It's going to sink into the pillow. It's basically you're muffling it. So you're going to get a lot of low end, but your distinction is gone. And that instrument has, believe it or not, it's got quite a wide dynamic frequency range. So you still have to have the capsule in such a way that it can be pointed at the source and still work properly. And vice versa. We spoke a bit about it last Friday. You're going to have great microphones on toms on a drum kit, but if you get too close with certain mics, certain capsules, and this varies between manufacturers. Some capsules like to be really close, some like to be a little bit further off. Some, they sound better with an offset attack angle. In other words, you're not straight on, you're slightly off angle. But then, if you're too far, it gets too ambient. If you're too close, it gets too percussive, so you lose a lot of the depth and the tone of the tom. So you got to play with it. You got to understand. And I've got multiple different mics. I've got clip-on mics. I've got normal 57s. I've got 421s, which is the brother of this or the cousin. I've got some great Audio-Technica microphones, pencil microphones, dynamic condensers, all of them, and every one of them you have to treat slightly different on the same instrument in terms of the distance you place it, the angle you place it at, to get the best possible sound out of that instrument. And that comes with trial and error. And if you start talking about a source, if you put a mic on something, walk to the desk and start tuning because you don't like what you're hearing, that's your first sort of point of call, like ding, 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 something's wrong at the source. You should be able to get to a console that's tuned properly. We're going to assume with PA sounds great, and get relatively close to what you want to hear, what you're expecting to hear when you open that channel and your gain is set right. If it's completely south of what you're expecting, chances are just either your source itself is messed up, or your miking technique, or your mic choice. It's a couple of different things. So don't be scared to go back to the source. I often do that. I listen to something and I'm like, especially on even a guitar amp, you hear it and you think it's a bit edgy. No, hang on, let me go listen. And you go have a listen to the mic amp itself. And you can stand next. A guitar amp is an ideal example of situational awareness. If you have a mic, an amp close to a guitarist, and this happens with inexperienced live performers, where if there's an attack angle of that guitar amp, so the guitarist stands 1 meter in front of it, and he's standing. So he's very far away from the driver in terms of the dispersion of it, and he's tuning to what he's hearing, and then you're miking it and it sounds very harsh. And he's like, no, but he's fine with it. It doesn't sound harsh here. But if you go down to the amp and you actually drop down, you listen, you think, oh, hang on, the amp does sound a bit harsh. So by tilting the amp so that he can be more aware of it, has a big difference. These days, we prefer to do off stage miking. In other words, we put the amp file, we've got some of the radial SDI boxes to maintain the gain, get the amp off stage, your band members on in-ears, which means he hears the miking situation pretty good, and he can contribute well from that perspective. That also helps. So you can see this conversation can go in all directions. There's a question here from Prince. What is your take on flown subs? Heavy. Especially on outdoor large-scale events. Look, especially if you go outdoors and large-scale, the quantity of subs is the thing that becomes the problem. If you're going to fly all your subs, you need massive structure, massive weight loading, but also you lose the coupling with the floor. So there's a combination of both. Your bass bins, if you like, look at the S28s of the VTX. S28 is designed to fly, the G28 is designed to stack. And the combination of those two is you can actually split the bands between them, run them separately like I've done before, and you actually get a very nice solution there. But this is now going, I want to try and stick to microphones here. Good question though. We'll definitely speak about that. I'm gonna get a couple of people to chat with me on the episodes about system design and all that kind of stuff. But you can already see with microphones, the conversation can go far and wide. People will ask you, what's your favorite mic? And there isn't an answer unless you contextualize it. What's your favorite mic on overheads? What's your favorite mic on a piano? And then also, I think about a solution that me and Marius had to come up quite a few years ago. We were doing Idols, and it was when John Legend was in town. We were still at Mosaic with Idols. It was Sunday Night Live, and we'd got the brief. He's coming in. He's gonna, because it's one song, he's in and out. He's gonna play with the track and sing live, but he's gonna sit at the piano. And we prepped it. We had a piano there. We didn't have the piano tuned because he wasn't going to play it, and we didn't have it mic'd. We had the camera angle. It was also placed in such a way that the open side was away from the crowd, so you couldn't see in the piano the way that was placed on stage. And then he arrived. We got to meet him, sat down. He started playing. He goes, "Oh, the piano's not 100% tuned." And we're like, "Yeah, but it's okay." And he's like, "No." He's changed his mind. He's going to play live. So two things happened. We had to phone in a tuner in, which we did. Got a tuner to come tune the piano. And then we were, at that point, I think doors had opened. We were 45 minutes, no, an hour and 15 minutes from air. So we got a tuner there in very record time, and he was tuning with the audience in the room, which is not easy to do. But all we had left was a Beta 52 and two Beta 98s, which are drum mics, as the only mics we had with us on site that wasn't being used at all. Now the Beta 98s have got the drum mount kits, which means we don't have the right clamps and stuff for a piano. But we made shift, did a couple of things, we worked with it, and Mario's got a great sound in front of house. I got a great sound on air. You can go and listen to that. I think it's still on YouTube. And it sounded pretty good, but I had to wangle. I couldn't get the mics in the right positions because of the clamps that we had. Because 98s can work on a piano, but your placement is obviously the issue. You can't just come left and right. You've got to be evenly dispersed. But we had a very good solution with what we had, but it was also the understanding of how the mics worked, and got them in a position that I knew by putting them in this position, I can go do X, Y, Z. And I did that, and we got away with it. My crowd mics in that song specifically, you can hear the crowd go mad. I didn't have crowd mics on. I only had those 98s. So because of the way I had to gain them and the way I had to place them, we got a lot of crowd, which sounded great, but it was all through the piano. Why large-scale events podium mic almost always fall flat? Award ceremonies, goosenecks, so awkward. People trying to reach to talk, crouching down. That's a very good question, Aidan. So, couple of things. So if you watch award shows, if it's a music award show, you often have musicians and vocalists that come in. Generally what you don't have on stage, so I'm going to answer your question in two parts. The people reaching down and crouching down into the microphone is because they can't hear themselves. In a big room, you've just been introduced by someone where the room was quiet. The crowd then applause. You walk up. You want to take charge of the room. You can't hear yourself. So by leaning into the mic, you're sort of trying to mix it, which doesn't really have an effect because all they do at front of the house is pull it down because the people can actually hear you. You can't hear yourself. And then, so it's a back and forth. When we've had award ceremonies where we've had time to coach the guest presenters and those kind of things, that works well. As your award winners, which are the tricky ones, because you never know how they're going to react. You do get some really nice motorized gooseneck microphone solutions where you can pre-adjust it. I know Fogtech has got one, but you need the right height of stage for that to drop down into. But it is a scenario. So the biggest problem with a person talking on the mic is you don't have monitoring coming back at them. If it's a presenter and they've got an IFB, which is called IFB is interruptible fallback, which is a mic. All in broadcast they call it an IFB. In live industry we call it IEMs, in-ear monitors. Interruptible fallback is they get fallback of the scenario and it gets interrupted, or they can be listening to the director, technical director, talking to them, the sound guys, whoever. and we can talk to them. The mic itself is not so much of a problem. One of the biggest problems we've had in the past on award shows especially is they build and design sets without considering sound for that position. They consider performance area and all that, and then they create this really good podium position which is going to look amazing on camera, but it's 12 meters out in front of the PA. That is a problem, because obviously in the room the people want to hear. And then they start becoming very ambient when you're watching TV, because what's happening is that 12 meters, 20 meters in front of the PA, the guy's talking in the mic, and he can probably hear himself better than most of the time because he's in front of the PA, but the PA is loud to get the PA heard. So you've got the front of house guy, he can't pull it down because then the people can't hear. So you've got this really odd relationship, and there's a time scenario there. So it's very difficult to get a good quality signal across. So what's happened more recently, especially productions that I've been involved in, I've made a point of right from the beginning when I started getting involved, speaking to technical director, speaking to creative director about, and I one of my first questions is what's the performance areas and what's the speech areas, where are they placed and because you're looking at the design, and then I will point out a couple of spots that if we rather not there or there, and then give my reasonings for it, because obviously ultimately if you're broadcasting a show like that, it is for a TV audience. So you need to get a good result across. Same thing for performances. If you've got a guy that wants to sing or an MC that's on a lapel mic or a headset, and you want to do him out in the crowd, you've got the same problem. That's why on a lot of these shows, not just locally, your MC will almost always be on a handheld. There'll be a lapel for a backup, but the handheld serves two purposes. They can take control of the crowd, but also proximity. So if you're standing out in the crowd, you're hearing yourself, you talk on the mic properly. Because it's a handheld microphone at the mouth, gain structure's down, I don't have all that ambient noise, I can control it better. The podium mics, then also is the height scenario, the choice of podium mics. A lot of guys just go and put handhelds because it's wireless. So you put, probably the worst mic to put on a podium is a 58, SM58 or a Beta 58 or a Beta 87 or something like that, because all of those are designed for speaking handheld, between 6, right to the mouth, maybe 6 to 8 inches away. Past that point, it is not a rifle mic. It is not a cardioid mic. Now, if I was in a studio environment, I could pull it off a meter, gain it up, the room's quiet, I can deal with it. But on a stage environment, the person has to be close to it, and then you get the point where you've got this big structure, big microphone, looks ugly, they want to drop it down, aim it up, and then the slightest little movement has a big impact on the sound. So if the person walks up and because you've seen that as well, people are completely unaware of the mic. They walk up, if you listen to me talking and you end up like that, you might be hearing me now, but it sounds a bit different. And I'm talking the same, but I'm talking into my chest. And the same thing when you're talking over there. My mic, there is the mic. The mic has a specific pickup pattern. You've got to try and be within that pickup. I've got leeway, but there's obviously a structure there. So what people tend to do is move it, and once they moved it, the next person has to move it. So we take time to train out our stage techs as best we can to tidy them up, try and preempt the height of the person if they're going to come out, if we do have that kind of scenario. But we've often now done it. You try and stick to your podium type microphones, which are little condensers. AKG and Shure, quite a few of them make them, and you can stick those onto belt packs, stick them on the base of the stand. You can make them wireless. The downfall of those mics is when you do lean into them, they break up badly. So I've gotten into the habit of taking like a SM81 pop filter, which is quite a big pop filter, and then I put that over the pop filter of that little condenser microphone. So even if someone leans in and touches it with their lips, they're still at least about 2-3, or not 2-3, about 1.5 inches, a good 6, 7, 8 centimeters away from the capsule. So you help. They're in it, but they're not on it. We even did that for example, at Idols, because the judges with the crowd behind them, they tend to lean in. And if you have the standard pop filter, it's too close. So we put extended pop filters with a gap in it. I made it make the whole microphone longer, so that when they lean in and they touch the pop filter, they're still a decent space away from the microphone. So you learn a couple of tricks to deal with things. Obviously, you got to keep, if it's TV productions, you got to keep making it look good. I mean, your best scenario would be a microphone and a shield, so they can't lean into it. So yeah, I mean, there's so many different things you can think about. You do tend to get scenarios where if you had post-production capability, you could fix a lot of those scenarios, even some of the distortion and all that kind of stuff. But when it's live, you have to take what you get and then, and anticipate. This is where the gain structure and the headroom comes in. You will get the microphone sounding great, but you've got to be aware that someone's going to lean into it. So your compressor, limiters, all that kind of stuff's got to be set up, and gain structure so that it doesn't break up the preamp. You don't want to over-compress it. You don't want to under-compress it. Proximity, EQ, all of those kind of things changes when everything changes. So it's basically keep your eye on the ball, keep control of it, test it. We tend to test it. One of the mistakes I've seen a lot of guys do when they test podium mics, sound guys, even roadie guys, is they put the podium mic up and they stand back and they test it 1, 2, 3, 4, and they talk normally, and they stand where the presenter's supposed to stand, and they only test it like that. And that's great, but we know that's not going to happen. It might happen with 1 or 2 people. Someone's going to walk into it. Someone's going to stand away from it. I've been in the situation where someone walked up, and they were quite tall, and they had to read, and they walked up, and the mic was in the way, so they pushed the mic aside, swung the stand away, so that they can read, and started talking. Completely unaware of what the purpose of this thing is. It's like, that's where you need a stage manager on comms, like, listen, help, put it back, all that kind of stuff. It's quite I've seen some silly things. I've seen someone walk up to give a speech and just start talking when they're not at the podium. They walk up to where they think they feel comfortable and they start talking. But the stand where they're supposed to be talking at is still 5-6 meters away from them. And it's like, not everybody's as technically aware as what we think they are, or we assume they are. So that's quite an interesting one. Thanks for that question, Aidan. There's no right or wrong, or there's a lot of wrong, but you learn from experience. It needs to be something that definitely gets more focus in terms of presenters and podium stuff. You need to spend more money on it. If you're doing corporates and you're doing that kind of show, using what you've got in your arsenal and not buying a specific podium microphone, in my mind, is the wrong thing to do. Well, you don't have to buy it. You can rent it in, but you definitely need to get proper podium mics in, and then anticipate. Make sure you got the proper pop filters on. People are going to lean into them. They are going to want to grab them. Train your stage crew. If someone's walked up and moved the mic to do their speech, when they walk away, put it back, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, let's carry on away from podium mics. But then even just going on to normal handhelds, wireless microphones. We had a nice chat with MJ from RF Junkies about wireless mics and RF itself. But the microphone side of things also has a big impact on what you do. When you buy RF microphones, generally your basic capsules that you get with them will be in the price range that you're buying, will be the best in that price range, or the best option in that price range. I know, for example, like with most of Shure's mics, even their Axion mics, they'll stick with the 58 as a base model, and then or a Beta 58, but every one of their capsules will work. Aidan says a KSM9 is a really good mic, and it's a really good microphone. So a lot of people don't know that KSM microphone has got a switch inside. You can go from cardioid to supercardioid. Most people never open it up to have a look at that. If you take the grill off, there's a little switch on the side of the capsule, so you can flick that switch. So if you're using it for someone doing speeches, like an MC scenario, make it supercardioid, because they're going to drop it away from their mic. And if it's a vocalist, that's going to be in the microphone or on a stand moving around a bit. switch it to standard cardioid so they got a bit more room. Because it's a KSM9 condenser, gain structure is really important, and not just gain structure on the channel, your gain structure through the chain. So if you're on an RF microphone, there's a sensitivity switch within the transmitter that you need to get right. Then there's a gain structure on the receiver side, and then you're coming out mic level or line level. A lot of guys go to line level because you get more gain, you can drop your gain down, but it's not necessarily the right thing to do for numerous reasons, because you can actually introduce more noise into your channel like that. So if it's a mic, stick to mic level and just make sure that your gain structure in the chain is right, and you should be 99% of the time should be fine in terms of what you get out into the console. And then obviously, I mean, it's talking about a KSM9 now. A KSM8 is a dual capsule mic that Shure's make, which sounds amazing. It's got a phenomenal proximity effect. But because of the two capsules, it's very, 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 very sensitive to mic technique from the person holding it. If you come up with your microphone too close to the capsule, you start getting reflections of your hand. And even if you just grab the back end of the capsule, you can start blocking off the back capsule completely, which gives some really nasty high mid frequencies off into the front. So it's something to be aware of. We did this on the voice. We used KSM8s because they sound great, but we made a very big point. What's nice about a Shure handheld is there's a little, just above the switch, there's a little divot in the design, which is actually perfect for the thumb and forefinger. And if you hold it there, the mic sounds great. And we just train them. Just keep holding it there, which covers the display, covers the switch, hold it right there. Don't move the mic up. Don't go too far down. Don't cover the antenna. Hold it properly, and you've got a good mic on that specific mic. A 58 or something does not bother too much, or even a KSM9, you can come up quite close to the back before it starts affecting the sound. What is the best way to deal with someone who has bad mic technique while using a wireless handheld? So it depends on when you realize it. If it's in the scenario, so if you're in situ and it's an MD of a company, the best way to deal with it is just to deal with it. Generally what happens if they do start cupping the mic. So in other words, there's two types of bad mic technique. There's someone that loves that holds the front, the whole rapper style. And I've used this example before. What happens to a microphone when you grab the capsule? You can test this yourself at home. Grab a little balloon, put some water in it. Don't fill it up too big. Make it about tennis ball size. Then hold it in your hand and squeeze. So what's going to happen is at some point between one of your fingers, somewhere, there's going to be a bubble that pops out. And you let go and you move it around, squeeze again. It's probably going to be a different bubble in a different space and a different size. So when you do that to a microphone, that's exactly what's happening. When you grab a capsule, there's obviously a polar pattern around that microphone. By you grabbing the microphone, you disrupt that polar pattern. And different frequencies pop out, nodes pop out. So you can have a different result. If you're completely closed, if I squeeze all my fingers together on the microphone, I can guarantee you it's going to come out here, the bubble. But the shape and size of it, so which frequency is it that's more prominent? Now, if you take a 58 and you do that, it gets very nasally, very telephone honky. So you get a lot of diction out of it. So if you're a rapper on stage and you do that, you can hear your voice gets perceived a lot louder. It sounds horrible, but you're louder. So, bad monitoring and bad habits gets the guys to start doing that. And then you've got the other one where they just drop off to guys who do speeches or aren't used to public speaking do this a lot. They start talking and then they forget what they're doing and the mic drops away. And they forget about the microphone, So if it's a talking mic, again, when you test it, when you set it up, make sure your gain structure is such that you can handle whatever's going to come to it. If it's someone that's in a band that you're working with, communicate. You can have a bag of watermelons at front of the house or nachos and chuck them if you want. Tell them if you see a nachi coming, you know what you're doing wrong. That's plan B. Plan A, communicate, but explain to them. If you walk up to someone and tell them, don't do that, and they go, why? Well, it doesn't help me. Don't do it, or it's wrong. You're not winning that person over. You come across as arrogant. But if you can demonstrate And I've done this many times. You can demonstrate the pros. Don't make people look bad. Don't make a fuss about someone or put them on the spot. No one likes to be, drilled out in public. But just communicate properly to them. You'll find that if it's churches is a good example. What I tend to do is if we've done training with guys, one of the things I train vocalists to do is when new people come in, which happens a lot in churches, the onus of getting that person integrated into the group is on the group. So they go from how they learn songs, what they do, parts to sing, and they go through a lot of training steps within that band to get people to gel in. So one of that, just add a technical aspect. These days we add 2 technical aspects. In-ears, do's and don'ts, put them in, how to put them in, pack volume, where to place it on your thing. Don't hang it outside your shirt, put it inside a shirt. Whole reason for that is at rehearsals, people hang it over their shirts and they take it out when they talk to people. And when you take it out, it drops off the back, you step on it, you've broken your in-ears. I've seen many people do that. So always just throw it through your t-shirt, under a jacket, under a scarf, under something, so that when you take it out your ears, it can't fall off of you. That's just a good hint that we tell people to do. And then microphone technique, how to hold it, what distance to sing at, where we hold it. And the reason for distance is because if you've got someone new into a team, it's the best time to train them on a microphone. Don't tickle your tonsils. Don't get too far off. If you think you're too loud, don't pull back. Communicate to the sound guy. I'm too loud in my ears. Let them turn it down, or manage your mix for you. Because there's obviously the sound guy's got his job as well. But in a rock band or a festival or anything like that, there's not much training that can happen. But if you're traveling with a band, having conversations with the guys when you're traveling around, if you see one guy keeps doing something wrong, even the guitarist, if it's a guitarist and he keeps moving the mic on his amp, you need to communicate why you put the mic where you put it. Not just, and here comes a good one. You move it because it's too edgy. And he's saying, but it's never edgy enough for me. Then you got to figure out why. Is it his monitoring? Is it what he's hearing off the amp? And then next time they set up, go stand next to him, explain to me what you're doing. Hear what he's talking about. And then you can go, hang on, okay, so he actually wants a little bit of a rounder sound. Then you moving it to get it more edgy or trying to EQ it more edgy is actually wrong. So it's communication both ways. So the best answer I can give you, Wayne, is communicate. But you need to be confident. You need to know what you're talking about. Just telling someone, you're not supposed to do that or don't do that doesn't work. Demonstrate. Don't be scared to get on a microphone, demonstrate it, hold it. Don't belittle people. Just be a kind human being. But there are ways to fix that. If you're, like I said, if you are doing a corporate and it's out of your hands, the way that you prepped for that is what's going to save you. So I'm looking at Poncho's comment here. With Dr. Toomey's the moment. He does take the microphone. Really, he's actually got a phenomenally powerful voice. It doesn't look like it, but he gets loud. So he can get up to almost full arm length at some points, depending on what notes he's singing. And then when he talks terribly quiet, and he doesn't bring the mic up. So I've got to be ready for a couple of things there. That wasn't a KSM8. That's actually a Neumann on the Sennheiser 5000 series transmitter with a 3000 series receiver that's got the command button so that he can talk to the band. Johan can remind me of the capsule model number. He'll throw it into the comment line now. I can't remember exactly what it is. Neumann something. But it really worked well. But that again, that microphone puts out such a strong signal. We actually put the sensitivity within the transmitter at neg 40, which is very low because of the quality of the thing. And then we got really good signal through. I had to, obviously in testing, get my gain structure right so that I don't have to fiddle with it for the recording. And then he's very good at his mic technique. So when he does drop away, it does tend to keep giving us level. But because we're doing a recording, depending on in the post-production, got to do a bit of cleanup on that. Where are we now? Oh, you're talking about the moment. Oh, at the monument. Sorry, I'm wrong. On Dr. Toomey's thing at the monument. Yes, that was a KSM8. There was a silver KSM8 last year at Loftus. It was a Neumann, which actually was a lot better solution. And then instead of having the switch button, we had a lapel mic under his jacket. So when he dropped the microphone and he turned speaking to the band, it's not because they had superhuman hearing. They had a on their MEs. They had a microphone for him talking, so they could hear what he was saying. Find the Shure Wireless much more user friendly to Sennheiser, settings, syncing, etc. G3 really good, but rather use ULXD plug and play almost. Yes and no. I think what's happened is Shure does have a very, very good user interface, but it's a specific language, and it's completely different to Sennheiser and AKG and Audio-Technica and Audix. So it's like a keyboard player, you know, if you're really good at navigating and getting your way around a Nord keyboard and you go sit behind a Korg, you've got to think a different way because their menu structures, their navigation, everything's different. And it's the same thing with wireless systems. Although Shure's been in it for such a long time, and they've kept a continuity as their mics have been developed, which has been pretty good. And with Workbench and all these kind of things, it is quite nice. I really like Sennheiser's new interface. The new G4 range is brilliant in terms of the GUI and all that. It is plug and play, but it takes getting used to. So I wouldn't say, you know, off the bat one is better than the other one, but the one that you know the best is always going to be easiest for you, especially when you're working fast. The quantity of ULXDs in the country, I've got ULXD, everybody's got ULXD, and it's a strategic buy. If you buy ULXD, chances of, you know, if you need 10 more mics or 50 more mics, I mean, we did Swane Gospel Choir, and we needed on that one weekend before lockdown, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, I think we had 56 channels of ULXD. I don't own 56 channels of ULXD. So I got from, Multimedia, MGG, and someone else, and ours, and SHQ. So I had to do quite a few microphones. So, you know, that's another thing to consider when you do buy, depending on what market you're trying to get into. You know, you don't have to buy everything to do gigs. You can collaborate with other people. So when you start buying, you got to think about business collaborations and that kind of stuff. So it was the Neumann KK104 capsule on the Sennheiser. Okay, Johan's correcting me. On that weekend, we had 80 plus ULXD channels on one weekend for SoundGP. Paul Smith, I thought you were on a different webinar. What RF stuff? Workbench is pretty. Workbench is, for me, obviously, again, I know Workbench the best. I don't know it as well as MJ does, but Workbench allows you to bring in other manufacturers like Sennheiser, AKG. It can't scan them for you, but you can tell it what bandwidth you need to operate within, and it'll give you frequencies for them. So if you're running Shure and you've got a couple of AKG or Sennheiser or Audio-Technica mics in your system, you actually, when you set up Workbench, you can tell it, you know, give me 4 AKG model number what frequencies, and it knows the software is in there, and it can help you manage those frequencies so that you can assign it to something. So when Workbench sees that frequency, it knows it's one of the frequencies it's assigned. So Paul, that's my quickest answer. I think that question we'll throw at MJ when we see him again. I know he's done some extensive research in RF management software stuff. When we spoke to him the other night, we didn't really get into the tech side of things. We were quite generic. Maybe I should get him back in with a couple of pictures of him just explaining exactly technically how he does what he does from a scanning perspective, from a management perspective. He's got some really good RF distribution, combination, combiners and distributors and all these different kind of things with scanning and software, and even remote software to on his cell phone. He can, with his cell phone earphones, walk around and scan and listen to every RF microphone on the system, just in a wireless setup in a room. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question, Paul. Puleng says, sorry for being late. It's okay. I'll forgive you this time. Just back to some generic comments about microphones. I tend to have, what SoundGP's got is we've got a large Audio-Technica and a large Shure complement of microphones. Shure, a lot of it on the vocal and the RF side. Audio-Technica, a lot of it on the percussive and the ambient miking. I've got 24 450s, I think, which is the pencil mics. I've only got 4 350s, but again, I use a lot. So there's companies, Fogtech just around the corner from me, or Sound Stylists, or Audio Logic, or whoever's got that I need from, I will get from them. So for me to go spend 120,000 Rand just so that I can have 25 350s to do orchestras with is not really a wise business move. That would be my first choice on the string section, just from a usability point of view. It's not. I'm not saying it's the best mic. There are some really good mics out there. We don't have as many and as widely spread microphones available from that choice point of view in this country. I'd love to have someone that owns X amount of Schups mics, or a large quantity of DPA string mics and that kind of stuff that is readily available. But Audio-Technica that is quite available for us. So we tend, and they sound great. They really work well. Nice Velcro strip placement, nice clip-on placement for larger instruments. They do sound good on toms. The only reason I won't use them on toms, I tend to try and stay away from almost all goosenecks on toms, except my old AKG 519s, because they're quite rigid. The 350s, if you're doing a long session, chances are by song 2 they've moved. Even a 98, unless you're using the new 98 B98A, the new one, which is the little toothbrush one, that's quite stiff, and I think they did that because they realized, the continuity of placement. But the old B98 with the clamp system and the gooseneck and the arm, a new one is quite nice because it's stiff. But as they get worn out, they start moving around, and you've got to be really specific on placing them. And your drum techs, you've got to keep checking them the whole time because they will move. So using my AE 2300s I actually use my Audio-Technica mics on my Shure Universal clips, solid ones. Put that in, you tie it down, that thing's not going to move. Even if the drummer hits it. If it does, the techie didn't tighten it, but that's not going to move. So I can have a consistent sound on a drum. There's nothing worse than microphones moving. Your kick drum, if you're on your song 3 or 4 and you go, my kick has just lost attack, or it's just sounding wrong. Don't start tuning stuff. The mic's moved. Your Beta 91 on the inside, if the guys don't prep it well, double-sided duct tape, your padding mustn't move around. Put the mic in, measure where it is, make sure it's not going to move, because obviously the guy's kicking it. There's a lot of really rough stuff happening in there. Keep it in position, because that mic just swivels, or I've gone scenarios where, like, someone says they just can't get the kick sounding right and the mic's underneath the pillow. It's slid off the side and it's lying underneath now. So just keep, and if you lose the low end on the outside, someone's probably walked past and kicked your microphone. Either torn your vellum or it's swung out. So it's always just continuity and checking where the microphones are. There's nothing more satisfying than your sound getting better through a gig, and that happens with you getting creative and tweaking as you're going, because your source is proper. You've got continuity and consistency happening. So as you're tweaking on dynamics, on EQ, your sound is developing. If your stuff's moving around the whole time, your tom mics and those kind of things, you're fighting an endless battle because you're going to keep adjusting all the time. And then what happens is, and I've seen drummers do this, and I thank them for doing that. Generally when it's those Beta98s or the Audex microphones or one of those on the little boom necks, they move away and the drummer sees it, and while he's playing, he'll just grab and put it back, and he just bends it back. He's not paying attention to where, he's just getting it back to the source. And it's probably not, it's either too close or too far. How would you fix that mic movement during a DVD recording? You can't really walk on stage. This is where preparation comes in. If I know that I'm doing that kind of recording scenario, I wouldn't even start with that microphone. You can get Beta98s in position properly, but you've got to be very specific on what you do. If you sometimes, because of the way the cymbals are placed, you end up putting your clamp in this position, then you've got to use the side angle of the mic and come around and do a 90-degree curve to try and get the mic in position. And if you've done that, I can almost guarantee you that within 3 or 4 tom hits, it's moving. So by getting it upright, and because if you think about it, if I'm coming from the side and I'm doing that with the thing, which a lot of guys do on the smaller toms, it's going to fold away, which means it's getting closer to the side of the vellum, and you can even go past the side of the drum. If you're upright with a clamp, you've got quite an arch coming in, but you're going to be more consistent. So it all depends. You need to know the hardware. There's certain mics that I just know that they're probably going to cause me issues, so I'm not going to use them. So if it's a DVD or if it's a high-profile event where you can't afford it to move, choose a microphone that you can put in place that's not going to move. If it has moved, even if it's a live DVD recording, there are opportunities between songs, and you have to do it. You can't do it during a song. You have to do it between songs, where either your drum tech or someone can just come from behind the drummer and just fix it. And it's probably going to go unnoticed. Even if it's a DVD shoot, if something happens on stage, you're going to have to go fix it. So your crew needs to be briefed on what to do when that happens, how to behave themselves, number one. They've got to be dressed appropriately, and do it right, and don't apologize for it. You're there for a reason, fix it. But try and preempt, and I think this comes with experience as well in your pre-planning. One of my sort of pet hates is guys that put out mics on the kick drum on the wrong stand, and they don't pay attention to the stand. They pay attention to where they put the mic, but they don't look at the stand. And this happens on hi-hats as well. People don't consider it's the whole thing is part of your problem. You can put the microphone perfect, but if the drummer moves his cymbal a little bit to tweak it, he bumps the back end of your kickstand and then moves your microphone. So you can't have the arm too long. So get the appropriate microphone with enough weight. Make sure that it tightens up properly. I try and get it as compact as possible so that it's in its own way, if anything. It's not bugging anything else. Same thing with hi-hats. If you're going to put a mic on a hi-hat, if it's a small drummer, you can do a short boom, come up from the side and look over. But a normal boom stand with a long arm is the wrong thing to put on a hi-hat. It's going to work, but the chances of your techs bumping it is 60%, 70%. Or the bassist leaning over to tell something to the drummer and then turns himself and he knocks the back end and then your hi-hat mic's moved. So you've got to consider the whole process all the time. So pre-planning, that's why one of the columns, when I draw up a channel list, after the microphone, there's a column where I put stands. And I write in there what stand I want on that microphone, whether it's a round bass, short boom, long boom, telescopic boom, non-telescopic boom. I don't want telescopic booms on my overheads because telescopic boom is about 6 inches shorter on the KSM than a normal boom. So if I want to get a good overhead position, again, if I got a telescopic stand, I can't get to where I want to go, so the right stand's got to be in play there. And even there, the way I've trained all my staff on a drum kit, I normally take the height of the highest bell of whatever cymbals are up. and that's the height that I will make the knuckle of the both overhead stands, which means I'm not coming at an angle from behind cymbals, and I'm not too high. If I'm too high, get too much of a down angle, which means your mic can get too heavy. If you're too low, your knuckles underneath the cymbals. Again, if the guy moves the cymbal, it can bump the side of the stand. So look at your cymbal setup, wherever the last knuckle is, and then go up. Now, having said that, you do get some drummers, and you'll see this on Friday, like Marlon. Marlon tends to have a very low cymbal setup across the board, just the style that he plays. So if I follow that rule with him, my overheads are too low. So I actually then make a conscious decision to go a little bit higher so I can get them in the right position. And vice versa. You can get someone like Neil Ettridge that is an open lefty, which means he plays with his right cymbal on his left hand above his hi-hat, and it's quite angled. So if I look at the knuckle to adjust the mic stand, I'm too low because of the angle of his right cymbal. The right cymbal is normally quite flat. He's just sitting like this because it's in the position he gets it into. If he doesn't make it flat, he has to move away too far because of the tom 1 and the hi-hat. So he rather goes a little bit higher, flattens it out so that he's got access to his hi-hat and tom 1. So he plays with quite a straight wrist. So I've got to consider that. And these are the kind of things that goes through my boring skull all the time. But I think about it from a camera perspective. How do I put stands up? What does it look like from this perspective? Also keeping in mind distance to snare. If it's drums, if I'm recording, I want to keep my overhead distance to the snare, keep the snare center, some recording techniques, all that kind of stuff. And then the choice of overhead mics. If a lot of guys just use normal pencils, I tend to try and always use large diaphragm condensers. I love my Neumann TLA 103s because they're just such a full mic. I can filter them with a high pass at about 100, 120, but I get a really nice tom sound off them. So my tom mics with those mics get a nice ambient, nice open kit, nice imaging, all that kind of stuff. If you're just after cymbal sounds, then a pencil mic will work great. I'll often do that, and I'll just come from underneath with the mic under the ride cymbal or something like that to get that captured. Having said that, when we do some TV shows, I'll mic the entire kit from underneath. I don't do overheads, I do underheads. But then you've got to be a little bit more specific, because if you come from underneath on the snare side, your snare and your hi-hat can become quite a bother to your microphone. So you might end up coming closer than what you normally would, which means your panning scenario needs to be more specifically planned. You might EQ the cymbals a bit differently. You might not get a balanced kit sound immediately. You'd have to do a little bit more managing of your mix. But on a movable riser, that gets moved on and off of a stage, I'd prefer to do that because overhead stands on a movable riser wobbles and falls over. So coming from underneath does solve that problem. It's not the same sound. It's not the ideal sound, but it does work. And then if you look, for example, as the way that Phil Collins does it with Audio-Technicas, he actually does front-on miking. So comes a little bit away. Instead of doing overheads, he just looks at the kit from that position. That can also work, but that again, that's a placement issue. If you've got a 2.5 by 2.5 drum riser, you can't get the mics in the right position for that. So you've got to think ahead on that one a bit. EP18 used the TLM 103s on the kit. That John's just reminding me. That's what you saw last week Friday. We'll see them again on Friday. So that's my intro for tonight. I think we need to get started now. Okay, I'm kidding. My coffee's getting cold. So thanks for all the questions tonight. Those are really good. What's the best mic for acoustic bass? Do you need more than one mic? When you speak about an acoustic bass, I'm assuming you're talking about a double bass, an upright bass, or an actual acoustic bass, because you do get normal guitar shape acoustic basses. I'm assuming you're talking about an upright bass. I would actually tend to use on that scenario something like the C1000 or a SM81, Shure SM81, but you have to let him play and listen to the placement. The F hole on the left side, and I'm saying on players left, your right, which would be the most out of the way, just in terms of movement. And then also I observe the player quite often. If it's someone like Denny Lalouette, he's done us all a favor and he's got an electric upright, but he's got a normal one as well. And he tends to keep quite still. But you get players that move around a lot. So if they move around a lot and they do a lot of movement, then a clip-on ATM 350 or a DPA or something like that you can clip onto the F hole to keep the position. We do that often, almost all the time with orchestra gigs. If we have enough microphones, or we do it with SM81s. The orchestra guys tend to keep quite still, so you can get the mic in a position, and they've got a peg in the floor, so they also know and the way they're seated can't really move because of the amount of people, so they're always going to get up in the same position. But you'd be surprised, the SM81's got some really nice bass response, really clean. The 350 as well, phenomenal bass response. Audio-Technica one. But you have to consider, I'd prefer a mic on a stand to get a little bit of distance so I can play with proximity and get it lined up. If you're doing a recording, if you're doing a live gig, watch the guy, see how he moves around. Sometimes the guys don't intend to move around, but the way that they've been placed on stage forces them to look around a bit more than what they normally are. And then when they move, they actually turn the instrument. So you've got to pay attention to that as well. Hope that makes sense, Aidan. Really good questions tonight. Thank you. I've had fun tonight. It's been going for an hour now. I'm going to hang around for a couple of minutes, see if anybody's got any more questions. Otherwise, keep sending comments. We're going to do this microphone week. So on Thursday night, I'm going to get some people to join me on this discussion. So we can talk about microphones. And it's good hearing other perspectives. The best way to learn about microphones is to try them for yourself. Kick in versus kick out bass drum miking. Which one do you prefer? Or both? I tend to mic both. I often only use one. I actually do three. I'll do kick in, kick out, and a sub kick, because a lot of the gigs we do, the genre varies a lot. So the sub gig gives you that little low end that you need. I don't use it all the time. I tend to defer to the inside kick mic a lot of times because you get a bit more isolation, depending on what's on the outside. If I get to a gig and there's a kick in and kick out just by default, a 112 and a 91 on the inside, I won't use the 112. I just don't like the way that it works. It's too unpredictable in placement. Even a Beta 52, if it's not placed perfectly, and when I talk about perfect, a lot of guys don't understand that porthole that's been cut in a kick drum, and I'm talking generically now because in South Africa most kick drums have a hole in them. That porthole is pretty much a big mouth blowing. So if you put a kick drum mic just outside of that and he kicks, you're not getting bass, you're getting popping, low end popping, and a lot of guys don't get that. And if you go look at the recorded sound waves, you can actually see the distortion of the capsule. So you got to move in past the velum to a point where you're not in that turbulence of the air path. And then if you go too far in, I use the blue line on a Beta 52. The blue line's on the velum line, then you know your capsule is about 1 centimeter inside. That sounds great. Same thing with my favorite kick out mic is a 902 Sennheiser. Works really well. If I can get my hands on an old school D12, I'd love to use that. A D112 is just the newer version, younger version of that. Having said that, a Beta 52, if I'm doing a jazz gig and it's the only one mic I have, I'll put that on the inside of the kick, a little bit deeper in, get a really nice sound out of that. What becomes difficult there is the mic stand that you use. So if you've got a drum with an inside clamp, or you've got a decent heavy bass short stand that you can get in properly. So I would say situational bass and genre bass, both. A lot of guys just go inside kick drum, they do high pass filter, outside kick drum mic, they do low pass filter, and they use the two together. The one's my bass, the one's my click. That can work, but yeah, you got to be careful of your phase relationship between those. What's nice these days on a lot of the consoles, all your digital consoles, you've got an input delay. Old school guys would just go in, kick out, phase button. But phase button is 180 degrees, and that distance on the frequencies we're talking about is not 180 degrees. If you're talking about low end, 50 hertz at 8 meters odd, that phase switch is not doing much. It makes a difference, but it's not the right difference. So I would rather listen, use a phase correlator, or just have a listen and make sure that you use a delay on your in kick mic to wait for the outside kick mic. So you delay your closest mic to meet up with the outside one to bring them into phase, and you get a good relationship there. A 902 and a Beta 91A really works well together, in my opinion. Other people really like a 91 and a 112, D112 from AKG. It depends on what you're trying to get out of it and how you use it. That's the thing. What is the relationship you're trying to establish? I do tend to, if I've got a Beta 91A on the inside of the kick, I'm very particular how I tune the kick and distance that I place that microphone from the vellum. I use my hand, so it's about 6 inches, depending on the height as well. If it's heavy padding, I'd come back a bit. If it's very soft padding, I'd try and go in a bit, make sure nothing falls on it. It's got a clear line of sight, and then I try and treat that as a single mic, and I'll tune my out mic the same way, and then I'll see, depending on how the drummer is playing, which one works the best for me in that scenario. Sometimes it's both of them together, so I'll make sure that I can bring it up together, and there needs to be a summing effect. I don't want a phasing effect to happen. The D6 is very nice. I don't have a D6. I need to get one. I've used it a couple of times. I've not used it. Well, when I've used it, it's not been on one of our gigs. I've walked onto a stage where there's been a D6. If the kick drum has a bass board, how would you place your kick out mic? I think I just answered that question. So if you think about it, if someone's playing the kick drum and you put your hand by the port, you can feel the air coming through there. And if you take your hand further in, you'll get to a point just inside the vellum where you're outside of that turbulence. So if you take a Beta 52, and it's got a blue line on the grill, and the blue line is just, if you take the grill off, you'll see where the capsule sits. The capsule's about that far forward from the blue line. So if you put the blue line on the vellum line on the port, the capsule is inside, out of the turbulence. And you can move it around. So that's the thing. If it's outside, it's getting a lot of that turbulence, which basically is just some air distortion, especially when the guy really start hitting it hard. But you have to listen. So I'm not against the bass port. The bass port does work well, but you got to place your microphone well. So putting a microphone like 2-3 inches outside of the kick facing the port itself, you're almost in the worst position because of the distortion. So on DVD recordings for drums, I heard sound guys say two different mics on the toms. I've not done that on the toms. It gets very bulky and messy. I do it on the snare and the kick. Obviously, the kick's got a couple of mics on it. I've done 2 or 3 mics on the kick. I've done maybe 2 in. There's not space for 2 on the out. And I've done 5 on the single snare, where I've done 2 dynamics and a condenser on the top and a dynamic and a condenser on the bottom. I'll tend to during the actual show use 1-1. Choose the one that works for me in my context. But then in studio, in post, the texture between those mics will give the guy whoever's mixing post a lot of options on what he wants to use. One works better for cross stick, one works better for the rim shot, other one works better for the ghost notes. Depends on what they do. So obviously, if you don't have a channel issue, you can do that. But if you think about it, on toms especially, it's very difficult from a spacing perspective and to look nicely, to look nice on camera. So I'm not saying don't do it. If you're in studio, go for it. You're often in studio, you've got more space around the kit, more stands, you can bring your stuff from all angles, you can do a lot. You just got to be careful that if I'm doing 2 different types of mics on a drum, I've got to set them up so that the relationship of every type of mic is the same on all the toms. Okay, specifically speaking about the bass port that has a cone shape, so it's a bit hard to find that vellum. Okay, I'm with you. That's like the Sonar one has one of those, and DW has one of those. So, yeah, it is a bit more difficult. It's even more difficult to get your mics inside. Then what I would do is I would come out the port and I would go off angle. So if you think about where the port hole is, but it's listening. It's also, and you want your 52, you can't go too to the side, so you can just go a little bit. It's like, if you think about talking on a mic, if I'm popping, if I just go slightly off, I'm not losing my proximity. I'm still there, but I'm popping past the capsule. So you just got to find that sweet spot, which will be there, but it'll take some listening. If you use a sub kick, does a 52 then become the in mic? No. A sub kick is a very unique element which gets sometimes used incorrectly. A sub kick, if you think about it, the DW one or the Yamaha one, I've seen guys make their own. I'm guilty of that. In the 90s, I made my own. Took a little 10-inch driver, built a little box, put a transformer onto it, got it working. It was okay. But the problem there is, if you think about what a sub kick is doing, a sub kick is really sub. So it needs to be tuned properly. Even if you listen to a sub kick, the Yamaha sub kick channel, you still have to process it a little bit, and then that signal needs to be going to your low end, to your subs. So if you use an inside kick, an outside kick, and a sub kick, my sub kicks generally would not be routed to left and right. It would be low pass filter, treated well, processed, especially when you're doing modern R&B stuff, and you can really get your subs working really nicely. Short gate, all that kind of stuff. So it depends on how you use it. If it's a soft gig, nice general background, all that kind of stuff, it's almost useless because it's too pronounced and you can't use it properly. For recordings, if you record it, you don't have to use it in your PA. And you also got to think about your PA. If you've got a little self-powered system, two 15-inch with horn tops and 2 self-powered sub 15 inches, a sub kick is going to kill the headroom on your PA. There's just because generally you're in a small club now, and then that one microphone will use up 50-60% of the capability of your PA because you want more sub. But you're on such a narrow band on the low end, it takes so much energy to bring those out that you drain your PA. So I wouldn't even use it. I tend to, on a small system like that, your low end will come from your bass guitar, your pads, your left hand on your pad player, depending on the genre you're in. But be realistic to what your PA can do. There's no sense in trying to push 30, 40 hertz on a little system like that. It gets ugly and you just drain the power out and you compromise your entire scenario. On the note of fixing mic placements in a broadcast or recording, having a good relationship with the director. Yes, we mentioned, I don't know if Paul was here in the beginning, that we had a question that came up about, and Paul Smith, freelance audio guarantee, worked with me a couple of times. Well, we've been working together for a long time on broadcast award shows where the podium mics are issues. And, and he says, in his question, he says, you've got to have a good relationship with the director, which is our technical director, in terms of placing microphones and, dealing with the whole scenario. So we've done some broadcast stuff where we've had mics on presenters that have gone really honky that we have to get on stage, and there's just comment to the director. Director says, everybody's listening to the director, and you wait for permission. And when they say go now, you go now. You don't wait. Everybody in the audience is going to see you, but no one on camera is going to see you. The camera comes back to the presenter, the mic's fixed. No one knows how that happened. It's just a miracle, And the director's got the skill and all the tools around him to make sure that They go to a crowd shot, they go to a wide shot, they go to different content so that you can do what you need to do for that whole emergency scenario. Just checking if I missed any questions. Doesn't look like it. Okay, guys. I enjoyed tonight. That was a nice, just open chat. If you've got any more ideas, don't be scared to throw some scenarios of what we can discuss or things that you want me to chat about, or whatever. This is just like magic. Yeah, there you go. This is not like a serious talk show where we've got rules and regulations. We want to keep it as open, and if no one's listening, then I'm just going to be talking to myself, so that's also good. I talk to myself a lot. But other than that, I had a good time tonight. I think I'm gonna cut it off there. We've been going for an hour and 16 minutes. Please join us on Thursday night. We're going to talk about, I'm going to have some guests on talking about microphones. And we'll cover a couple. I think some of the questions that came up tonight will come up again from different perspective. And then don't forget on Friday morning, our practical session with Marlon Green again on the drum kit in the studio. This week we're doing it on the Avid S6L. And then headsets are for a different session. Yes, we'll talk about headsets later. And don't forget to go check out the episode on YouTube. You can win a microphone. I'm going to say the wrong thing now, like I normally do. Shure MV51 mic, episode 16 of TalkGP on YouTube. Go check it out, drop a comment, subscribe to our channel, and then we'll announce that winner on Thursday night in our show. And you stand a chance to win a microphone. Okay. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you next week. Well, Thursday. What's today? Okay, I need more coffee. Thanks, guys.